The air in our office had grown thick. It was a change you could feel, not see. A subtle shift in the atmosphere. People spoke in hushed tones. They gathered in small, tight circles by the coffee machine. Then they would scatter when someone senior walked by. Something was wrong. We all felt it. The tension was a low hum, a constant vibration that ran beneath the surface of our daily tasks. It was the kind of environment where secrets festered, where unspoken words held more weight than any email or memo. I tried to ignore it. I kept my head down. I focused on my work. But the feeling was inescapable, a silent alarm that no one dared to acknowledge out loud. I worked as a project coordinator. My boss, Mark, was the director of operations. He was charismatic, powerful, and respected. At least, he used to be. Lately, he seemed different. He was more on edge, his temper shorter. He would disappear for long stretches during the day. His office door, once always open, was now perpetually closed. The change was noticeable to everyone on our team. We exchanged questioning glances during meetings. We wondered what was happening behind that closed door. The office gossip, the whisper network, had its theories. Most of them centered on the immense pressure from an upcoming merger. But my gut told me it was something else, something more personal. Another key figure in this unfolding drama was Sarah. She was a junior analyst from another department. She was bright, ambitious, and recently, she was always around Mark. They would have private meetings that ran for hours. They would leave for client lunches together, returning with flushed faces and an air of secrecy. The official explanation was that Sarah was assisting Mark on a confidential project related to the merger. It was a plausible story, but the way they looked at each other, the small, almost imperceptible touches, told a different story. It was a story the Whisper Network was starting to piece together, one hushed conversation at a time. It felt like watching a slow-motion car crash. I tried to tell myself it was none of my business. What my boss did in his personal life, or even his professional one, was his own affair. As long as my work wasn't affected, I should stay out of it. But it was affecting our work. Deadlines were being missed. Approvals were delayed because Mark was unreachable. Team morale was plummeting as the uncertainty grew. The favoritism towards Sarah was becoming blatant. She was given opportunities and access that others, who were more qualified, were denied. The situation was creating a toxic environment, and the professional lines we all relied upon were becoming dangerously blurred. I was caught in the middle, an unwilling spectator to a drama I wanted no part in. The discovery happened on a Tuesday. It was late. The office was nearly empty. I had stayed behind to finish a crucial report for an upcoming presentation. Mark was supposed to have signed off on the final numbers hours ago, but he was nowhere to be found. Frustration was mounting. This report was my responsibility, and his absence was putting me in a difficult position. I sent him a few emails. I called his desk phone. No answer. Finally, driven by a mix of desperation and annoyance, I decided to check his office one last time. I just needed that signature. I prayed he had just stepped out for a moment and would be right back to approve my work. I knocked on his door. Silence. I knocked again, a little louder this time. "Mark?" I called out. Still nothing. The door was slightly ajar. Against my better judgment, I pushed it open just a crack. "Mark, I really need you to..." The words died in my throat. The scene before me was not what I expected. The office was dark, except for the glow of a computer monitor. And on that monitor was an email chain. Mark had forgotten to lock his computer. My eyes were drawn to the screen, and I couldn't look away. It was an exchange between his personal email address and Sarah's. The words were not professional. They were intimate. They were undeniable. My heart hammered against my ribs. A wave of nausea washed over me. I felt like an intruder, a voyeur who had stumbled upon a secret not meant for me. The emails were explicit. They talked about their last meeting. They planned their next one. They spoke of deception and risks. They even mentioned Mark's wife by name. It was all there, in black and white. The whispers were true. The rumors were real. I felt a strange mix of emotions. I was shocked at the blatantness of it all. I was anxious, terrified that someone would find me standing there, and I was deeply, deeply conflicted. This was not just office gossip anymore. This was proof. I backed away slowly. I closed the door with a soft click. My hands were shaking. I stumbled back to my desk, my mind racing. What did I just see? What should I do? My first instinct was to forget it. Pretend it never happened. Getting involved was a dangerous game. Mark was my boss. He had the power to make my life miserable, to ruin my career. Exposing him would be professional suicide. But then I thought about his wife. I thought about the unfairness of it all, the blatant abuse of power. Sarah was getting ahead not because of her work, but because of her relationship with the senior director. It was wrong. And now, I was the one who knew the truth. For the next week, I lived in a state of constant anxiety. Every time Mark walked past my desk, my heart would leap into my throat. I avoided eye contact. I kept my conversations with him short and strictly professional. Sleep offered little escape. I would lie awake for hours, replaying the scene in my mind. The glowing screen, the damning words. The knowledge sat like a heavy stone in my gut. I felt complicit in my silence. Every day that I said nothing felt like a betrayal of my own values, of the company's code of conduct, and of Mark's unsuspecting wife. The moral dilemma was tearing me apart. I knew I couldn't act on the memory of an email alone. It was my word against a powerful director. I needed more than a fleeting glance at a computer screen. I needed concrete evidence. The decision to gather it was not one I took lightly. It felt sneaky. It felt dangerous. But I also felt it was necessary. If I was going to risk my career, I had to be absolutely certain. I had to build a case that was irrefutable. So I started paying closer attention. I documented everything. I made quiet, careful notes of the long lunches, the closed-door meetings, the dates and times they left the office together and returned separately. The next piece of evidence fell right into my lap. Our team used a shared expense reporting system. As a project coordinator, I had access to review my team's submissions before they went to finance. One afternoon, I was processing Mark's latest report. I noticed a receipt from a high-end restaurant. The date matched one of the days he and Sarah had been out for a client lunch. The charge was for 2 people, but the client meeting he had listed for that day had been canceled, a fact I knew because I had been the one to reschedule it. He had lied. He was using company money to fund his affair. It was a clear violation of policy. I discreetly took a photo of the receipt with my phone. With each piece of evidence, the weight of my decision grew heavier. I had a log of suspicious meetings. I had an expense report that was clearly fraudulent. It was a pattern of deception. This was no longer just about a personal affair. It was about a breach of ethics, an abuse of power, and misuse of company funds. Mark was not just cheating on his wife. He was cheating the company. My personal feelings of disgust were now mixed with a professional obligation. I had a duty to report this. The risk was immense, but the cost of staying silent now seemed even greater. I had to speak up. I just needed to figure out how. The day I decided to act was the hardest day of my professional life. My hands were trembling as I drafted the email to Human Resources. I attached the evidence I had collected. The log of his and Sarah's unexplained absences, the photograph of the fraudulent expense receipt, and a detailed, factual account of what I had witnessed. I reread the email a dozen times. Each word felt like a step off a cliff. I worried about retaliation. I worried about being labeled a troublemaker. I worried about losing the job I had worked so hard for. But then I thought about the toxic environment he was creating, and I hit send. The click of the mouse felt like a gunshot in the silent room. The response from HR was swift. Within an hour, I was called into a private meeting with the head of HR, a woman named Linda, and a lawyer from the company's legal team. The room was sterile and intimidating. They listened to my story without expression. They asked clarifying questions. They were professional, but it was impossible to read their thoughts. They assured me that my report would be taken seriously. They also reminded me of the company's non-retaliation policy, promising that I would be protected. It was a small comfort, but in that moment, I felt completely alone. I had set a machine in motion, and I had no idea where it would lead. The next few days were excruciating. The office became a pressure cooker. Mark must have been notified that an investigation was underway. He didn't know who had reported him, but he was paranoid. He stared at everyone with suspicion. He was cold and distant one moment, then overly friendly the next. He called me into his office for a chat. He asked me how I was doing. He asked if I had heard any rumors going around. It was a fishing expedition. I kept my answers vague and non-committal. My heart was pounding the entire time. I was sure he could see the guilt and fear in my eyes. It was the most terrifying conversation of my life. The tension affected everyone. The whispers grew louder. People took sides. Some defended Mark, unable to believe he would do such a thing. Others, who had long been suspicious, watched the drama unfold with a sense of validation. The workplace became a minefield of alliances and accusations. My own colleagues looked at me differently. Did they know it was me? I couldn't be sure. I felt isolated, walking on eggshells with every interaction. I ate lunch at my desk. I avoided the coffee machine. I just wanted to be invisible. I had done what I thought was right, but in the immediate aftermath, it felt like I had destroyed everything. The formal investigation was a quiet storm that ripped through the office. HR and the legal team worked discreetly, but their presence was palpable. They conducted a series of interviews. They spoke with me again, going over my evidence in painstaking detail. They interviewed Sarah. They interviewed other members of our team, asking about Mark's behavior, his absences, and the general office atmosphere. They pulled years of expense reports and digital records. It was a thorough and methodical process. The investigation was no longer about my single report. It was a full-scale audit of Mark's conduct as a director. The company was taking it very, very seriously. The results came about 2 weeks after I sent my initial email. We were all called into a mandatory all-hands department meeting. The vice president of our division stood at the front of the room. He looked grim. He announced that Mark was no longer with the company, effective immediately. He didn't give any details. He just said the company was moving in a new direction. A collective gasp went through the room. It was a shocking and abrupt end. Later, we heard that Sarah had also resigned. The rumor was that she was given the option to resign or be fired. Just like that, the two central figures of the office drama were gone. The news sent a shockwave through the company. The silence that followed Mark's firing was deafening. No one knew what to say. The air was filled with a mixture of relief, sadness, and uncertainty. Some who had been loyal to Mark were visibly upset. Others, who had suffered under his poor management and favoritism, breathed a quiet sigh of relief. For me, it was a complicated feeling. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel happy. I mostly felt an overwhelming sense of relief that the ordeal was over. I had exposed a wrong, and there had been consequences. Justice, in a corporate sense, had been served. A week later, I was called into the vice president's office. I was terrified. I thought maybe I was next. Maybe they were cleaning house. Instead, he closed the door and thanked me. He told me that my report had brought to light serious ethical breaches that went beyond the affair. He said that it took courage to come forward. And then he offered me a promotion. He wanted me to take on a new role as a project manager to help stabilize the team and restore morale. He said I had demonstrated integrity and leadership. I was stunned. In the midst of all the chaos and fear, I had been recognized. I had not been punished for speaking up. I had been rewarded. Accepting the promotion was both exhilarating and daunting. I was now a project manager, leading the very team that had been in turmoil for months. My first task was to heal the divisions and rebuild the trust that had been shattered. It was not easy. Some of my colleagues knew, or at least strongly suspected, that I was the one who had reported Mark. A few saw me as a hero. Others saw me as a traitor who had cost a man his job. I had to navigate these complex dynamics with care. I made it a point to listen, to be transparent, and to focus on our shared goals. My priority was to move us forward, away from the drama of the past. The office environment began to change almost immediately. With Mark gone, the cloud of tension and secrecy lifted. The whisper network slowly dissipated. People started talking openly again. The favoritism that had plagued our department was gone. Projects were assigned based on merit, not on personal relationships. There was a renewed sense of fairness and professionalism. The new atmosphere was a breath of fresh air. It was a reminder of what a healthy workplace should feel like. We were finally able to focus on our work, to collaborate effectively, and to rebuild the positive culture that had been eroded. My new role was challenging, but incredibly rewarding. I had to prove myself not just as a competent manager, but as a leader who could be trusted. I worked hard to support my team, to advocate for their needs, and to create an environment where everyone felt heard and valued. I implemented new processes to ensure transparency in decision-making and expense reporting. I wanted to make sure that the kind of abuse of power we had witnessed could not happen again. Slowly but surely, the team began to come together. We started hitting our targets. We started innovating again. We were becoming a high-performing team once more. Looking back, the promotion was more than just a new title and a bigger salary. It was a validation. It was proof that doing the right thing, even when it's terrifying, can lead to positive outcomes. It showed me that one person's voice can make a difference. I had risked my job to stand up for my principles, and in return, I was given the opportunity to lead. It was a profound lesson in corporate justice and personal integrity. The experience changed me. It made me more confident, more resilient, and more committed to fostering an ethical and respectful workplace. I had found my voice, and I was now in a position to use it for good. Today, our office is a different place. The transformation is remarkable. The culture is no longer defined by secrets and suspicion, but by collaboration and respect. The ghost of the affair has faded. The story has become a cautionary tale, a part of our department's history that reminds us of the importance of accountability. The changes have been overwhelmingly positive. Productivity is up. Morale is high. People seem genuinely happier to come to work. We have proven that a team can recover from a crisis and emerge stronger than before. It took a painful disruption to get here, but the result was a healthier organization for everyone. My feelings about the whole ordeal have evolved. The initial fear and anxiety have been replaced by a quiet sense of pride. I am proud that I found the courage to speak up. It was one of the scariest things I have ever done, but I know it was the right thing to do. The experience taught me a powerful lesson about justice. Sometimes, justice is not a loud, dramatic event. It is a quiet, difficult choice made by an ordinary person who decides that they can no longer stay silent. It is about holding people accountable for their actions, especially those in positions of power. It is about protecting the integrity of the workplace for everyone. Reflecting on my journey, I realized the profound impact it had on my personal growth. I learned that my own moral compass is stronger than I ever imagined. I learned to trust my instincts, to gather facts, and to act with conviction, even in the face of fear. This experience forced me to define my own boundaries and to stand by them. It was a trial by fire that forged a stronger, more confident version of myself. I am no longer someone who just keeps their head down. I am someone who is willing to stand up for what is right, no matter the personal risk. It is a change that has empowered me in all aspects of my life. For anyone who finds themselves in a similar situation, my message is this: you are not powerless. Speaking up is terrifying, but silence has its own cost. It erodes your integrity and perpetuates a toxic environment. Document everything. Seek advice from a trusted source. Understand your company's policies. And when you are ready, present the facts calmly and professionally. You may not get promoted. The outcome is never guaranteed. But you will have upheld your own values. You will have chosen integrity over comfort. And sometimes, that is the most important victory of all. You will know that you did the right thing.